The story begins with prison. The guy named the event came to visit his girlfriend. He reached out to the girl a sacred relic and insisted on her. It was a treasure of a temple that could turn back time. The event stole him for the sake of a girlfriend imprisoned in a dungeon of a sacred building. Before the girl asked why the West himself did not use the stone, he replied that he did not possess divine power, and therefore in his hands this treasure was unsuccessful. But the girlfriend can at least try to apply it. Rosie sadly noted that her strength would not be enough to activate the relic. After all, at least someone like a supreme priest is needed. The West fell to the ground, which made Rosie turn away from the fright of a friend's life. He really wanted to save the girl. Having destroyed the temple, he promised to liberate the corner. In the last minute, before the spirit left the boy, he apologized that he could not hold back the promise. Rosie was desperate and tried in every way to reach a friend. But the breathless body of the event lay on the cold earth of the dungeon. It was the Duke Dinfering, the owner of the divine wolf, who was imprisoned with the corner and the last precious man. The event is the only one who remained in the girl in this world, and the temple took him away. Her name was changed 3 times. By the age of 5, she lived in an orphanage where she was called just a corner without a name. As soon as the girl had a divine power, she was sent to the temple, where the corner of Tryon was called. This name was given to all students with the slightest divine force. There were many such as a corner in the place. Therefore, they were ordinary workers. One day in the spring, when the girl was 11 years old, was found by her brother Julian Nort. The guy apologized to the corner for holding up. He arrived as soon as he learned of its existence. Although their father is different, the mother is the daughter of Count Nodder. And from that moment, a girl who lived in the so-called kindergarten for a long time became a member of the Nort family. The existence of Julian Rosie also did not know, but with its appearance it was called Nodder. The brother immediately suggested that the girl go to the estate of the Graf, where she would now live. The Noarth's family was the richest in the corner could not even dream of that name. Moreover, the Count's family openly opposed the temple. As a child, nothing of this was important to the corner. It's more important that she eventually appeared people who love her. Only such reality made Rosie the happiest. Julian clamped his little sister in arms and promised that she would not pass through what he had. The guy is sure that Rosie just needs to eat well and be the healthiest. That is, to be an ordinary 11-year-old girl without any worries. She followed Julian in Narth's estates. It turned out that Rosie's brother was an incredible person. They said that the guy was considered the strongest among ordinary people, including priests and magicians. The brother was exceptionally talented in all possible industries. Julian darkened his relatives and became the heir to Nymate, and as a favorite sister, Rosie received his care and patronage from him. The girls were filled with happiness, but it was not long. Only 14 months have passed since the corner got the name Nodder. With Julian, there was an accident. The guy lost his memory and could no longer identify his sister. For the first time, the girl saw irritation on the face of an expensive brother. Rosie realized that she and the strongest Julian were not destined to be together. She suggested that the brother was completely confused because of the loss of memory and no longer wanted to be a burden for him. Due to her upbringing, the girl always fought with low self-esteem, so she decided to just leave the estate. And it was the greatest mistake in her life. The inhabitants of the temple began to laugh at the corner as soon as it crossed the threshold of the building again. They were looking forward to the moment to close her in prison and give a girl different experiments. For 10 years, the corner was closed after it turned 12. During this time, Julian's brother was killed and the estate was completely destroyed. All this was made by the hands of the temple, even knowing this girl could not do anything, because it was very deep underground. And one day, when Rosie was going through this hellish time, she met the West. The guy secretly penetrated into the temple and found it in the dungeon. Since then, the event has risked his life to visit the girl, and if he did not become her friend, she was unlikely to survive. But now her friend is also dead, leaving a relic that can turn back. However, the corner is convinced that the stone does not respond to its weak divine power, but still did not lose hope. The girl wanted to return in time. She did not want to experience the death of a person dear to her again. Rosie was powerless all her life, so she wanted another chance to change everything. She was sorry and sad that there was no longer Julian, a brother who cherished her above all in the world, as well as a West who penetrated a dark prison to just see. Rosie held a relic in her hands and imagined the most expensive people and hoped to destroy the temple once and protect everyone. Suddenly, bright light was lit, and the girl returned in time. She was in a familiar room that was furnished with toys and exquisite outfits. There was no doubt this is one of the rooms of Nymid Estate. Rosie took the newspaper to make sure she had moved 10 years ago. She was embarrassed because she did not understand how the relic was able to respond to its divine power. Probably the girl was so desperate and pathetic that the sacred stone decided to spare her. Let it be there, in the corner there was no time on it because it is necessary to act. She must concentrate on her past to save the future, and the first thing she has to do it to save Julian. Senior brother Julian Nort is older than 12 years. After loss of memory, it became an uneducated rural slaughter. This is what allowed the relatives to seize all his wealth. After being wounded, the brother left the estate, and after some, he was killed by the mercenaries of the temple. For whom they called the strongest, Julian's death did not make sense. But the fact that Rosie is right now in Narth's estate means that her brother is still alive. Now it cannot allow such a thing and will protect it with its best. After that, she should find the Dinfering West. Rosie would like to meet him as soon as possible to repay his debt. If she returned 10 years ago, the guy is not easy now. But now they are unfamiliar with him. If a girl comes to the Dinfering estate, it is likely that she will just be exposed to the door. Although she misses the West strongly, she should wait for a convenient moment. The latter is planned to protect the county of North and deal with the temple. After all, she was not only tested, but also killed the most expensive people. This time, the girl will not allow the temple to be embodied, and then the county of North will not be able to decline. Shortly after Julian's death, their grandfather died, Earl North. Since then, illiterate relatives have only taken control of the family to completely destroy it under the influence of the temple. In order to combat the enemies of the corner, it is necessary to engage in the support of the genus Narath. That is why a girl cannot allow these relatives to take everything under control. It is determined to cope, because now the corner is no longer locked. In the past, the use of Rose was too powerless and weak, now it does not want to be. The girl's reflection was interrupted by the Maida's maid to report Julian's awakening, and also that the boy has partial amnesia and his last memories of 7 years ago. It was the same day when Rosie left her brother. Julian's current mental age is not 20, 4 years, but 17. As soon as the girl got into the estate, his brother told her that he had a difficult youth. Sister would be disappointed if she found out what he really was. A reckless and aggressive boy who saw nothing but a dark flame is full of hopelessness. Julian only became ashamed of the thought. Now he became exactly the way he was afraid to be, no longer a loving brother. He became the last bully. Hate suggested that the gentleman did not remember the corner, but still suggested that her visit her brother. The cunning relatives sew like a locust around Julian, waiting for a successful moment to remove it. If a girl wants to win, then she needs to harden her heart. And first of all, she decided to visit her brother. Assistant Solvanodiac reported Julian that there are now 24, not 17, and he suffers from partial amnesia. The guy's thoughts were confused. It seemed as if he were going crazy. Julian was the only son of a poor butcher with the settlement forgotten by God. No day passed without quarrels with a Gamroman father and mother alcoholic. The mother was the daughter of a nobleman, and his father worked as a servant for her family. After a short novel, they were born Julian, and the couple fled here to the village. In the end, a woman did not endure agriculture. She threw her son and husband, then left. It may have grown up that the boy grew up in chaos and had a crazy youth, but everyone in the village knew him as a slash from a meat shop. One day, Julian woke up and found that he was no longer a teenager, but an adult. Moreover, he became the heir. The guy was a grafted. As soon as he turned 19, Julian moved to the county estate and took the name of Naorti. For 5 years, he has been actively developing and became the strongest. Therefore, it is quite obvious that the guy was called the heir to Noart. Silva repeated the same thing several times, since Julian could not believe what was happening. He was also not usual that the assistant was formally communicating with him. Silva explained that no longer his friend from the village, but they have a relationship with the employer. The guy suggested that Julian briefly return in those years and talk to him as then. The heir of the county happily agreed, because otherwise he will not believe. Silva ordered his employer not to behave as a parrot, but to accept his answer. He explained that Julian would need months to move again. In the meantime, the assistant holds his fist not to knock out the guy, so he asks Markat from the meat shop not to try his patience. Julian was quite embarrassed and tried to digest all the information received in his head. No matter how strange it sounds, but all this is true, and in addition, his body is completely destroyed. Heidi asked for permission to visit with the coroner of her older brother. Solva warned that the young lady would be shocked to see Julian's condition. However, the girl noted that she was already aware of the situation and wants to see her brother. Julian almost had a brain explosion when he heard it, because he never had a sister. Heidi drew attention to the hairpin that was in her lady's hair. It was a gift from Julian for the girl's birthday, so the maid suggested that the gentleman, seeing the decoration, remembers his sister. Julian has always chosen special care for Rosie. Before meeting her brother, the girl decided to write a letter. She remembered how Julian always told her to stay bright and confident where she was. Rosie plans to listen to these words and live according to his brother's desires. The girl will become the one who always speaks her opinion to everyone, given even her brother. Julian believed that he was bullied, because he could not believe that he had a sister. Prior to moving the corner, she escaped as she heard these words. The brother looked like an absolute stranger with this cold and indifferent expression. After that, the girl no longer saw Julian. She was closed in the dungeon for 10 years, and all this time she caught her choice. Therefore, if it wants to change the future, this time it should act differently. Rosie introduced and noted that the council to see her brother. Although they have different parents, she is still his sister. Julian noted that the girl is away as a child. Rosie reminded her brother that when he was 12, his mother escaped from home, as she turned out to have another man and she became pregnant with her. The guy was indignant with such behavior of the mother who escaped without explanation. Born into such a family, she fled twice in the middle of the night. Julian also did not understand what idiot he thought of roaring such a child. The girl explained that it was her brother who told her during their first meeting. The mother then left the corner in the orphanage and later died. Julian was so embarrassed that he was covered by a silent cry. The sister added that he brought her into this estate, cherished and loved. He also promised to take care of her. Rosie noted that they had 12 years of difference and thought that it would be easier for him to remember. Julian hoped that it would help, but realized that he could even care about himself. And before that, he needs to nurture a child. Before Julian managed to pierce something offensive, Solva closed his mouth with his hand, then asked the girl not to take what was said to the heart. After all, the heir of county does not understand what he says. Rosie noted that it is impossible to write a mouth to his boss. She is sure that her brother will not miss this. Solva explained that he did it just because he knows his master well. As soon as the memory returns to it, the roof will go immediately. Julian is likely to be shown for a similar behavior towards your beloved sister and asks why he was not closed. Then he will close in the rest, arrange a starvation, and weep at night. Hearing this, the guy caught even more panic than before. He was confused and did not know what to do now. Julian woke up and suddenly became the strongest Graf. And he does not even know anything about the aristocracy. The guy really wanted to go back to the meat shop and forget about it all. He had no understanding of how to act because his head is empty. And now he is told that he has a younger sister who needs to take care of. Rosie was painful to watch Julian's reaction. Previously, she could not imagine. Her noble brother turned into a rural negligee. Rosie must accept what Julian Nart, who once headed the family against the temple, disappeared. The guy apologized for being too sharp. The sister agreed that he had empty in his head. Now he is a hopeless baby. And she became convinced of it, seeing in person. Rosie added that it would be difficult for a brother to survive in the Nort Count, as a grandfather is not with them now. She ordered Heidi to pass the contract which she prepared earlier. It was a written consent to the transfer of all the inheritance of Lady Rossinarth. Julian was shocked by such a course of events. The sister served her brother and innocently asked to put right now. The girl drove her brother with a seal because they had little time. Julian understood that something was not clean here and that the porch just wanted money. He asked what plans are in the corner for these fortune. The guy noticed a chic sister and jewelry outfit and suggested that she was a screwdriver. She was so young and was already scattered. The girl noted that he bought it, all of it. She added that she was also of the idea that her brother had overdone. Rosie suggested that she think positively, because now they came together in thoughts at least something. County is not county, but Julian planned to return to his store. But now he has to take responsibility even for suddenly falling on his head. A girl who sinks from head to heels, the guy is not even sure whether she will handle her. Julian wondered what his sister would do when he leaves the estate. He is determined to return to the meat shop and suggested that Rossi go with him. However, the girl noted that there was no intention to leave this place. Julian suggested that his sister was better to live in a noble estate, than in a meager meat shop. The guy even thought that even for the better if just their paths would go. Rosie insisted that the brother did not delay and put the seal. She reminded Julian that he still plans to quit everything. In any case, if it were not for her, he would not have learned about his fortune. Rosie began to appeal to her brother's good faith. The girl noted that the sad known cat does not want to sign the document because she rushes empty words, or just a liar. Julian was annoyed and grabbed the contract. The coroner reminded that magic was required to sign, otherwise the contract will not have legal force. The brother was indignantly stated that he knew this, because he was not a deceived. The case was done and rejoiced like a new toy. Julian began to think whether his sister did not provoke him. In any case, once she is a close relative, he will give her everything, but he asked not to spend everything without need. On the one hand, Julian was bitter because he heard, to amnesia, he loved his sister, but now he saw another picture. The girl was only worried about money. He could not believe that their relationship was built only on dresses and preciousness. Subsequently, Julian heard a noise in the hallway and a crowd of men with papers appeared in front of him. All of them, one by one, climbed the father in hell, trying to convince the guy to sign their agreement. Julian was confused, and he was required to simply put the seal. They also reminded of the use of magic so that everything is legally certified. Silva tried to intervene and save his master. However, no one listened to him under the pretext that it was a matter of life and death. Men, all as one, were driven by Julian without letting him think. Rosie showed Silva a document for which all her brother's fortune belonged to her. The assistant noted that uninvited guests simply waste time because all the rights now belong to Lady Rossi North. Men were outraged by such news because it was not included in their plans. They did not expect Julian with amnesia that he had not forgotten that he was ready to give his heart and soul for his sister. Rosie suggested that because of the changed situation, men were already halfway to their owners, and their documents have no legal force since Julian is addressed. The brother wondered that the girl was referring to the owners. Rosie explained that these were their dear relatives who lost everything through the boy. If he put the seal on those documents, then all his fortune had passed to them. There is no their grandfather here, and those bloodthirsty jackals are just a hand. Silva was gratefully bowed to the girl. He was quite impressed because he did not think about such a course of events. Rosie noted that those people were happy because of the situation with their brother, and therefore she would not give them a county. Julian realized that if it weren't for his sister, he really stamped everyone in turn. He also at least did not know what he had a fortune. The puzzles formed, it turns out to conclude with him a contract for the transfer of inheritance not because of the desire of money, but because it provided everything. Silva asked that the girl was going to do in the future because the hyenas went, but they would return with a new passion and a whole bunch of documentation. They will also declare regardless of the time of day. Rosie noted that she was still better than her sick brother. The doctor warned that Julian needed complete rest because his body has not yet strengthened. The girl assured that there is no need to worry. She would not allow someone else to take possession of this money. Julian was amazed that his sister did all this for the sake of him. Given that all this noise disappeared, and they figured out at least with a part of her motives, Rosie suggested that her brother talk truly. First of all, the sister did not understand why such a trouble happened to their family. Her heart is ready to break into pieces, and the heart hurts so much. She asked what to do next. Julian noted that the girl talked too late. It seemed to him that she thought everything for a long time. Rosie agreed, but the situation is difficult, and she cannot sit back and cry. She also asked her brother to contact her name and not call a small one. The guy noticed that his sister quickly agrees with everything, even if he was dangerous here. He does not give up his intentions. Sooner or later he wants to return to the store. If he wants a rose, he can make him a company. Although not as gorgeous there are no people such as in county. Rosie wondered how long the brother would recover. Julian noted that his sister's stubborn and does not want to listen to adults. The girl noted that she takes an example from him because he also continues to call her as she wanted. The brother confessed that according to the doctor, he would recover for several months. But even then it will be difficult for him to control the sword. Moreover, he does not know if his memories will return. Julian is sure it will be better if he returns to his village. The brother added that he would not be able to handle the people who are here. Rosie assured the boy that he would not happen again, so he didn't need to worry. The sister noted that Julian lost all his fortune, and therefore would go completely with empty pockets. The guy ironically thanked the girl who ruined him. Rosie noted that the brother did a lot for her, so she should not thank her. She doesn't want Julian even thinking about going. Because the grandfather is very important for the guy, so this place is much safer than a meat shop. The older brother is surprised that Rosie says so, seeing his papers. The girl is sure that the men came to the estate only with the documents, because the guy inside, being from the outside, would be a knife instead. Julian thought about what kind of man he was. Silva intervened in the conversation because he was interested in his brother, and his sister planned to deal with this situation. The assistant noted that Rosie is very young and will look in the eyes of others with easy prey. After all, they use any opportunity if they are punished by their bosses. The girl reassured Silva, saying that she would have to abuse her title and put her detractors in place if they did not understand in words. Julian met many strong people, but Rosie seemed really cool to him. The fact that she can speak like this is so confident makes her even more terrifying. The sister advised her brother to rest and remember that he had no relatives who could be trusted. She assured Julian that she would not hurt him. Rosie stressed at the council that the brother woke up because she really missed him. The guy was embarrassed because he did not understand what sense to visit a completely broken person. He did not rest that the child was asking him not to worry because he would protect him. Julian wondered in Silva whether he was close to his sister. The brother wondered that the little sister was called a little corner and fell behind her. The assistant confirmed, because Julian almost prayed for a girl. The guy hid his sister in the room and kept the impression that Mrs. Kristaleva. But when Silva saw how Rosie was repelled today, he was amazed at her ability. The assistant noted that the girl is very smart, convincing her brother not to leave the estate as well as to resolve the issue of his fortune. Julian seemed to be somewhat similar to his sister. Silva is not sure about this because the master's face looks like a wild beast, and Lady, on the contrary, innocent creature. Despite the similarity of hair and eyes, they look completely different. Julian agreed that he was really similar to his sister. The assistant was struck by the fact that the gentleman hears only what he wants. The guy was thinking about the words of his detractors that he rewritten everything into his sister. He wanted to understand how much Rosie loved, if reacted. The girl lost her beloved brother instantly. When she screamed, it was visible that she was in one step from crying. If she used to be Julian so much, she really was painful. The brother began to think that he did as the last pagan. The property he left for his sister is like compensation. In any case, Julian did not even suspect his wealth. With such success, the guy could leave all his sister, which no one was suspected of, and end it. Julian wanted to know how rich was. Since he was the heir of the count, it would probably be enough for a decent house on the outskirts of the capital. Silva noted that he could not name the amount, but he wrote the orientation on the paper and showed the gentleman. Julian was quite shocked because he had almost 1.5 billion gold. The maids gossip about Lord West. They said he broke the engagement in the 4th. They did not understand why Lord did not follow the instructions of the family. The girls are sure that everything would be much easier. Despite his wealth, he remained so stubborn. The maids seemed to be a long time. The event sat in the arms of his wolf. He was painful and he was crying. He assured himself that he would handle and never succeed. Hattie noted that nowadays, the best times for sadness and corner should remain strong. The doctor noted that the memories could return at any time, so the maid suggested waiting together. The Narth's family continues to live in a large estate. Contrary to the hunting of relatives on Julian, this is still the safest place for them. No one dares to attack the guy in the estate of the Count. Grandpa Rosie, on his mother's lines, the richest man of the empire, Caliban North. He rose from the lower classes and earned a whole wealth. Thanks to marriage and money, the Caliban was able to reach the highest status of becoming a Graf. Ruthless, heartless, and very ambitious person. But the man also hid the dark past. He was a slave at the temple. During the time that Caliban spent in slavery, he was deeply hated and insulting to the temple. It is quite natural that in the end, the purpose of the grandfather of Rosie was the destruction of this organization. The girl suggests that this is why Julian hid her in the estate and so carefully protected. The brother had a study in which he found out that Rosie's father was a low-rank priest who lived in the village. Caliban despised the temple, but the girl flows the blood of their priest. It was thanks to his father the corner was born, though with a scanty but still divine power. Julian planned to keep his sister as far away from his grandfather, given his dislike for the temple. He also advised the girl to avoid meeting her relatives. The guy understands that the estate is not suitable for the child because each of those people is very cunning and greedy. Julian was also not easy when he came to the county. Rosie noted that even the brother became the heir, and therefore he was greater in cunning. The guy began to laugh, then lifted his sister as a sign that she was right and smart. Then Julian stroked the girl on her head and noted that she should not repeat his path. Although Rosie has never seen relatives, she is sure that her relatives celebrate the loss of her brother's memory. Suddenly, she heard someone sounded. The man said eagerly that Julian had gone the roof. In his past life, the girl met this man at the same time. Roston North has stated that the butcher is now in such a position that Rosie just had to return to wear her place, despite the fact that her mother shamefully left the estate long ago. As the only son of the eldest Uncle Rosie, Roston thought he would inherit everything. But when Julian destroyed all his plans, she had no borders with hatred to the girl with her brother. The guy began to knock his finger on the lobby Rosie and point out that Julian wisely would not love her as before. He ordered that North hates the temple and that the girl is not a place here. Rostan stated that the native of the temple would never be admitted to a noble family. Therefore, he insisted that Rossi would collect things and return to his hole. In the past life, the girl believed the words of Rostan. He was never glad because she is here, and Rosie herself believed that she was here. Then the cousin won, and the girl did not resist. Rostan swung at the corner to frighten and kill his common sense. Men with documents were now looking for a girl, not her brother. Rosie decided to take the opportunity and show that she was not going to stand aside. She turned on the actress's mode and successfully that Rostan pushed her. The men came closer to talk to the corner, not paying attention to her cousin. At this time, the guy noticed a document that flew in the corner from his hands, the girl aware that she stumbled. She is a little surprised, so she suggested talking in her room. Rosie confessed that she would not cope with this money. Rostan began to bustle when he learned that the whole fortune had gone to his sister. Instead, the girl rejoiced because she made it clear that she was not just a ward but the owner of billions. She continued to play the role of infirm. Since there is no grandfather, the corner planned to trust Uncle's money, but now she sees that it was necessary to look through this decision, as Rostan showed the true intentions of his father. The sister reminded that the document stated that her whole fortune should cross the temple. Ironically, that the cousin was asking the girl to return there. The guy puzzled so much that he lost the gift of language. Rosie continued to dig a swamp grave, noting that the fabric of Eton, whose brand brings large profits. This shows the true brother's devotion of the family. Grandpa emphasized every morning to view newspapers. Therefore, the corner hinted that it was the swallow that is the only among the North. The girl added that sacrificing the fortune is an important decision, and given her past, her grandfather hates this place too much, so she needs to think. Rosie hoped that men with documents would handle their owners' every word. If Rostan was holding his tongue, then that money would really go to his uncle. She already imagined his face when he learned. Rosie noted that the brother was right because she really came from the temple, and also her mother escaped at his request, which caused the scandal. But the girl no longer considered herself a pathetic person. If Rosie was that, it would be upset by Julian, who loves her so much. In her past life, she made a terrible mistake without appreciating herself. The girl was convinced that the love of her older brother had disappeared forever, although she still remembers the care and grace that Julian gave her. Memories of this continue to live in the corner. Rostan's words will no longer cause a younger sister pain. She will not repeat this mistake and listen to him. And no matter what kind and who is, whether Julian remembers it, she will not retreat. The brother always took care and defended the corner, but now she will be able to stand up for herself. After that, the swarm ran away, and the sister closed in the estate. She was able to exhale with relief. The girl could deal with urgent affairs, but this is not enough. It is unknown that cunning relatives can think of Julian's inheritance. The grandfather should return as soon as possible because he is the only one who has enough power to protect his brother. However, the problems will not disappear anywhere. After learning about the accident with Julian, Caliban, who was abroad, immediately hurried to return to the empire. But in his way, there was a terrible shift that detained his grandfather's arrival. By the time the man got to the estate, Julian was already dead. Rosie needs to find a way to return Calibana faster and earn his trust. This is the best way to increase the girl's impact in the county. If Julian starts all over, then stay inheritance in the nobility of the Nort family. In just 5 years, his brother was able to become strong, and he will be able to repeat it again. Until the brother takes control of the family, until they combine efforts and destroy the temple. Rosie will not allow anyone in this house to harm Julian. Rostin's father was angry with his son, the guy convinced that he knew nothing. He could never think that a cousin would ever give the whole inheritance to this parishioner. Bello Noart was not bought on his son's snot. After all, Rostin lost all the money only because of his tongue without bones. Bello began to think that at least 100 billion gold was at least 100 billion and initially intended to entrust him. The father was disappointed with a son who only knows how to scatter money and cannot do anything right. He told the guy to get out and did not get his eyes. Bello struck the table with anger. For that money, he would have paid all his debts in just a day. The man planned to take possession of his nephew until Caliban returned, and also before his brothers and sisters did not sniff everything. Bello ordered his father's return in any way. Close the road, break the carriage, or arrange an accident if necessary. The man was ready for everything, even if something with Calibana happens on the way to the estate. Rosie was convinced that before the loss of memory, Julian was going to invest in one construction. Therefore, they were persistently ongoing to sign the contract. The girl noted that she was still mastering reading because she was never taught in the temple, and therefore asked her to give her some time. Rosie emphasized that too many phrases she does not understand. She began to manipulate, as if she did not remember where her brother wanted to invest the money. The man emphasized that the girl just put a seal. Rosie assured that if the interlocutor was in a hurry, then she can sign some other document and make an attachment to another contract. It is enough that the papers are difficult to read and even mourning. The man realized that it was not necessary to press on a girl, and therefore, asking, promised to return otherwise. After the corner stopped boggling, she decided to relax and read the newspaper. A photo of the young Duke Dina Faril was flavored on the first track. It said that the young heir had broken the fourth engagement. Everyone was interested in what fate is staring. There are 4 duke families in the empire. Each duke runs a divine beast that embodies water, fire, air, and earth. Among them, the duke who controls the fire beast is the West. Throughout many generations, the heads of these families were born with great divine power. Because of this, their divine beasts had to absorb and use surplus to maintain balance. But in recent decades, the power of the beast has begun to weaken. The energy was nowhere to go. They could not absorb so much of the owner's slay. And this power that was in their bodies began to rage, to bring a hellish pain that brought to madness. There were only 2 ways to avoid it. One of them was a soothing, created magical tower. But because of the difficulty of getting the ingredients, the tower could no longer produce it. Another option was to use the powerful divine power of the supreme priest to suppress pain. Without choosing, the Dinfering family turned to the temple for help. But in exchange for this, they demanded to sell them a divine beast. The event resisted to the end, but eventually the wolf was taken away. The temple was stuck in the prison of the beast and the corner, and they have already started carrying out their experiments. She was told to make contact with the wolf, learn how to conquer it, and then convey all the information to them. Rosie was lost in time, considering how many experiments on it, until the event penetrated the dungeon to see his friend Wolf. The guy asked how the corner was here and how old she was. However, she did not know, because she was experimenting again and again. Thanks to the hereditary duke, the girl realized that she was already 19, and she spent 7 years in prison. After that, the event made his way into prison every full moon when the divine power was the weakest. For 3 years, they have talked about everything in the world. Its history, past and present, behind these walls. Before the return of the corner, she was already in love with the West. She never had the opportunity to confess, but in the middle of her soul she knew. And the West felt the same regarding the girl. Due to the fact that the guy told her about the world, she knew exactly what to do. Her first love and savior is the event. This time, the corner will find a guy and become a rescuer for him. The 4th torn engagement of the young duke is a chance for a girl. She began writing a letter for the Dinferl family, in which she officially asked for a precipitation with the Duke of the West. After all, in this life, she was about to be with a boy from a young age. But now such an act is needed only for the sake of rescuing the West, but it would be a palm if they were in love with each other and married. Heidi noticed what she was busy with the lady and was surprised when she learned how to write so well. Rosie realized that she had been exposed. After all, in her past life, she never learned to read until she was in the estate. The maid noted that the girl is very smart and quickly learned everything, but did not understand why it was difficult to read. Julian hired the best tutors, but no one was able to help his sister. In the end, the event taught the coroner to read, though it took a lot of time. And the girl realized that Haiti recognizes it strange. She confessed that she was uneducated because she wanted to win her relatives, and so she asked the maid to keep it secret. Heidi realized that the lady had a plan from the very beginning. Rosie thanked the trust and noted that she had to see her brother. On the way, the girl faced Roston. She noticed that her brother was still wearing an Eton fabric, though she personally explained him. Trendy things were more important than family values. This explained why the temple was absorbed immediately after his grandfather's death. Heidi suggested that the swarm was stewed. She also noted that the estate was too quiet, so something happened. Rosie shared the idea that the cousin realized how terrible capitalism was. Julian was still asleep, though dawn has already come. Sulva assured the girl that he was going to wake up the master. Despite the fact that the assistant friend of childhood Julian, he continues to remain a professional and has always been near the brother of the coroner. The guy shared from the coroner that Sulva of those boys Zubril, who had never succumbed to walking lessons. He was stubborn and serious. At the same time, this harsh guy is mowing on different lovely things and goes crazy with cats. Julian is convinced that Sulva is better in her business. He will be given to the last people he recognized. The young count is sure that a friend will be good at his wonderful sister, since Julian was the most valuable treasure for Julian. The girl believes brother because in his past life, Sulva followed his master to the end, even after he went and protected him until his death. This means that the assistant can be trusted. Rosie asked her husband to bring her seal Julian. Then she began to wake her brother to Sinai, and then he could sleep again. The young earl wondered if he had something else he had to pass on his sister. However, Rosie assured him that he was completely ruined and therefore should not worry. The guy noted that it sounds even more anxious. He drew attention to the girl's brooch and advised to buy jewelry that would be more appropriate for children and not so old-fashioned. Moreover, he is convinced that with such a design you can call the sun god himself. Rosie agreed with her brother, but on the other hand, it is the first brooch he bought her. Julian realized that he had a fool. Then he fell on the bed and asked him to sleep. Rosie insisted that the brother first put the seal and then rest. Sulva noticed that in the document the lady officially asks for engagement and, to put it mildly, was stunned. He hoped that the girl was joking. However, she assured the assistant that it was quite serious in her intentions. Julian, hearing only one word, almost did not get up. Sulva is convinced that his gentleman will lose any sleep. If he returns to his memory and he finds out that he allowed her sister to do the same, the young Graf will start breaking everything in his way. Rosie believes that the current brother does not respond so. However, Sulva knows deeply in his soul that he was presented with the lady's seal. He is cut not only by his fingers, but also by his head. But with the mind of the 17-year-old, Julian was not delighted with engagement. Moreover, he is indignant that his sister is spinning. The young lady sarcastically remarked that her brother should not be signed without familiarizing everything that he has given in his hands. She advised to consider it valuable experience and move on. Julian was even more angry when he was reassured in such an instructive way. Rosie did not understand why the brother was so angry. It seemed to her that, along with his memory, he had lost his social skills. Sulva noted that there was no guarantee that the young duke would agree. Given the current position of the Dinfering family, there are many obstacles on its path. Rosie agreed that there was a high probability that she failed. The sister reassured Julian so that he would not take everything close to her heart, because she would rather be refused. She promised to go to her brother in the afternoon. However, he did not understand why she was. Rosie stated that she was missing Julian. At this time, near the Solomensky district, Count Kelebin raced home. His assistant stated that they were near the communication node, so they may soon be able to find out the good news about Julian's awakening. Rosie helped her brother breakfast, feeding him from the fork, and emphasized that he did not let his muscles strain. She noted that making a living is not easy. Julian also noticed that he had changed his outfit again, and then he sharply changed the topic to talk about engagement. He wanted to hear more details. The sister stated that she was not shaking. She found the one she wanted to engage with, and therefore sent her proposal. Sulva had already faded, feeling inevitable in his direction. The assistant knew that he would be bored for having personally gave the lady's seal. Therefore, he immediately asked the owner not to worry, since the Duke would accurately reject the request. Rosie slammed her brother in her hands to protect the soul. After that, Julian was still going to return to the village, and until recently he still had on her. The young earl confessed that he could not explain, but as if some instincts were telling him to reject the idea. Solva was even more frightened because if the master returns to the master, he is a net. The assistant thought aloud that Julian would come down when he would understand. The guy said he was hearing everything. Then Solva added that she could not sincerely want his employer to return. Julian decided to miss this ear and talk about how the Rosie was surrounded by men recently. The sister noted that she was not scared. She continued to say that she did not know anything or remember. The rest still understands that the sister has a brother's fortune. There is only one in their heads, the naive baby suddenly rich, and therefore do not worry. After all, given the age of the girl and the fact that wealth fell on her like a dream, no one sees in her a real threat. Rosie seemed crazy for brother. But in spite of this, she was still a child for whom 1 billion of gold is a large amount. Due to this amount, those people with papers do not give it a pass. Julian noted that it was better for him to keep money in his rose, because it is not a big amount for her and it will be difficult for her to handle her. The brother suggested turning everything back to him, but the girl refused. In the shelter, she studied one rule: not to trust people who say that they will keep your money until your adulthood. And also flee by shining with heels if they offer money in a big deal. Julian realized that the shelter gave the girl useful knowledge, and therefore it would not be easy for him to convince her. Rosie asked if the brother knew something about bonds and promissory notes, but the boy's brain did not download any information. She assured that she would return the money in only one case: if he becomes more aware of his sister and proves that he is worth trust. And now, until no one is bothering them, Rosie has expressed a desire to be out. Julian was surprised by such a sudden initiative because he was never blunt. That is why the sister decided that it is worth trying, perhaps, that the brother is incredible genius. The guy still agreed because he was stuck in 4 walls, and he did not have too much choice. Julian noted that he loses his self-control in front of his sister's sad face. Solva added his 5 cents to the wealth of the corner. He heard that at a monthly gathering planned to discuss her inheritance, they will also question whether a little girl can handle it. This monthly family gathering is resolved by important issues, and at the next meeting, relatives will try to take possession of the wealth of the corner. And given that Caliban's grandfather is not in place, it will be difficult for her to resist her relatives. Julian was indignant that the issue of inheritance should be resolved by elders. Rosie noted that according to their logic, this money belongs to the families of North. And given her age, relatives will say that they will retain the wealth until the girl's adulthood and will not forget about the contribution to any business. As a result, it will be decided to divide this amount between all relatives. Julian, from the annoyance that they will manage his wealth, knocked on the table. The sister assured that she already had a plan, and the brother, meanwhile, should focus on her treatment. She also reminded that it was not his money, but her. Rosie plans to multiply the wealth at times, and then return them to Julian. The guy suggested that he was another scam she learned about in the shelter. The girl hoped that Solva had sent her grandfather a letter after Julian wake up. The assistant replied that they planned to transfer news through the communication center in the region. The young lady began to visualize all the way through which Caliban should go so that she would eventually get to the estate, and she realized that he should bypass Tefan, where he had a shift last time. Rosie stretched out the supplement to the letter and insisted that he was convinced that his relatives would not know anything. She advised the assistant to say that he was reporting to Grandpa on Julian's health. In the letter, the girl asked her to bring her a bracelet from the shell. She is ready to pay any cost for this decoration. She also stressed that she was looking forward to his grandfather's return. Solva noted that it was the first business of Earl North, even at a time when he was a sailor. Rosie confirmed this, noting that in this case, Caliban did not ignore her request. The assistant did not understand the intentions of the lady, why she asks for such a gift. Rosie confessed that this is the essence. She does not want anyone to realize her plan. To interest my grandfather, the girl must ignite special curiosity in it. The young lady assured that the letter only the beginning, and stressed that Solva would watch closely. She plans to make Caliban notice her granddaughter. My grandfather learned from the letter that Julian was beaten, but he had serious injuries and, in addition, partial amnesia. Subsequently, he noticed another letter, personally from the corner. He saw her only once and from afar, so he did not understand what it was. Caliban remembered how his grandson kept his sister. He even hid her in the long wing and did not present any relative. Julian reported that the former student from the temple. Therefore, Earl North suggested that his grandson feared that he would hate the girl because of this. But in view of everything, she got into that organization, not even on her own. Kelebana was offensive that his beloved grandson considers him so foolish. If Julian's smarkak does not come to his arrival, he planned to shout him directly into his ear, which was cut with paper. The grandfather had already imagined how the boy's eyes would be like 5 cents, and then he will jump from the place and will scream from despair. After reading a letter from Rosie, the man ordered the route to change. Kelebana's assistant was confused that he was changing the route at the request of his granddaughter, which he saw only once in his life. However, the Earl noted that the girl plans to pay any cost for the bracelet. The man had a principle that he always follows in business. Whoever it is, Caliban will never bypass the desperate deal. He assured the assistant that he would understand everything later. The Graf wants to take the risk, but then regret the lost jackpot. Moreover, if his granddaughter is ready to pay any cost, then he simply cannot refuse. The estate was semi-darkness and outside the window of a thunderstorm. Silva stood and looked at the horizon until Julian paid his attention. The gentleman was angry at the assistant that he easily gave the corner. The guy explained to his employer that he ordered to indulge every sister. The young count took the sword, after which he stated that anyone who touched the corner would pay. Silva woke up all the hungry, so frightened that it was a reality. He began to think why the young lady was suddenly interested in engagement, although she has nothing to do with the Duke. In that letter, Rosie encouraged Dinfrel money that they could multiply. Silva suggested that it was a plan to strengthen both families for the welfare of Julian. If everything goes according to the girl's plan, even the Count himself will give his consent. The North's Count family had a short history, while the Duchy of Dinfrel has existed for a long time. Despite the fact that two families belong to one kind, their position is not at the same level. For example, the Grand Noble Conference of which can only be attended by 4 Duke families. For many years, the main goal of Earl North was to get there. But as if Caliban did not try on his way, always stood the inviolable wall of pioneering. But if the corner becomes the bride of Count Dinfrel, then the Earl would be able to take part in the conference. According to the internal laws of this family, if you are absent, the bride's family receives considerable authority. This would give the family Noart of great power and influence. The assistant mentioned the words of the young lady who indicated that she desperately seeking to attract the attention of her grandfather. She is only 12, but she goes to feats for her brother. Silva constantly thought that Rosie was just an innocent, charming, and soft baby. But in fact, she is very smart and thoughtful. Due to excessive protection, Julian's sister could not show her abilities. When the young heir returned to the age of 17, year old, the assistant felt complete hopelessness. But he did not expect to decide on such a bold act. Julian noted that his sister is too worried about his appearance, while a person is more important, the soul. He stressed that the girl changes the outfits several times a day. Rosie awakened this claim. Then she asked her brother as he had success with his studies. Julian confessed that he was a real genius, because reading pages he immediately remembers everything. The guy never realized his talent, so he did not study as a child. Therefore, he told his sister that she could now safely turn to him for help. Silva emphasized that his gentleman was not so called. Julian also shared that even the doctor notes that the speed of his recovery is striking. If everything goes so well, today the guy will be able to get in a wheelchair. They say that if the Tower of Magics learns that Julian is recovering quickly, he wants to pick it up for experiments. In view of this, the endurance of the guy is equal to the endurance of the Holy Knights. Julian seems to be his dream. Rosie noted sarcastically that she did not know that her brother's dream was a subject in the Magician Tower. Although it is strange for her, she still supports her brother in his crazy intentions. Silva noticed that the Lord looked still grumpy, but in fact he was looking forward to meeting with Rosie. And before the loss of memory, the guy found time, despite the tight schedule, on tea with his sister. Julian confessed to the assistant that the time spent along with the coroner is his most happiness. The girl treated her brother with cookies. He was so moved that he shared this news with Silva. When the young Graf returns to memory, he probably will be crying from memories for a whole month as Rosie treated him. At this time, Uncle Bello was happy that a collapse took place in Tiefin. Due to this spontaneous trouble, the road was blocked and the communication node has not worked for a long time. There were no messages from the Count that they even assumed that something had happened to him. Belad would play in his hand, but he knows that his father does not seem easier, so he will definitely come back. But even the shift is enough, because the Graf will not have time to return to the great noble assembly. The man hopes that the father is delayed for longer. He plans to deprive the girl and her brother of the meatball that they have and pay for all the suffering. And before returning, Caliban Bello is set to get rid of nephews forever. Even when the Graf is already arriving in the Empire, he will never see more grandchildren. Rosie warned the assistant that in the evening he would send hay to him, after which he should go into the room in the lady, and so that no one noticed. Sulva was reported in front of Julian. The young lord was confused that her sister called the assistant, not him. Sulva suggested that Rosie is probably worried about his brother and thinks that the path to her bedroom would be difficult for him. Julian agreed, because his sister still does not know that he can move with a wheelchair. The guy rejoiced that the doctor praised him, as he was the best patient with physiotherapist Peter. After a minute of self-capture, Julian suggested that his assistant go to his sister to show her what he was genius. He also wants to boast of his brand new trolley. The guy planned to surprise Rosie, who always wanted to see him, and here he would come to her. Sulva noted that in noble families, even between his brother and sister, such sudden visits do not welcome. Julian did not listen to the assistant and rushed to the cart to the corner. Sulva stood and looked at the trail. He stressed that the guy reckless and unbearable. Rosie, looking at herself in the mirror, remembered how Julian paid attention to her outfits every time. Brother did not appreciate his earrings, although he chose her from the jeweler. Once, Hate suggested that the things that Julian himself gave his sister would help him remember. After that, the girl changed jewelry and clothing for every meeting with her brother. But everything was unsuccessful. Behind the brooch, Julian said that she did not fit the baby, and because of the frequent change of dresses, he compared a corner with a chameleon. It is hopeless to cling to such a baby hope, but the young lady had no choice. None of them were lucky with their parents. Julian suggested a sister to be a ray of light for each other, to cherish and take care, to become the only real allies in this world. Rosie then said that the brother did not need her protection because she was smaller than 12 years. Julian noted that he would grow old faster, and therefore asked to promise the corner that when he would truly be old, she directed his trolley more often. The girl did not like that her brother was so early to speak of such sad things. The guy noted that it would happen sooner or later. Sometimes he thinks about it and realizes that everything is not so bad. At least when Julian retires, he will have a lot of free time. He imagined the day they would finally dine as long as they dine. The young heir always did not have time because of a tight schedule. Rosie hoped that at least they would have dinner together, but more often at the table, she sat alone. A common dinner is something ordinary, but it began to happen after Julian has spent memory. One day, she was practiced in reading because she was slowly studying. The brother assured the girl that it was not necessary to hurry, as a tutor said she was capable. However, Rosie noted that they would say anything if they pay them. The sister is sure that if she does not hurry to learn to read, he will grow up and daring. Julian reassured Rossi by starting to study when he was far from 19. Then the guy could not wait for the moment he could read the book with his sister. This is his second main dream, and the first is a secret from childhood. Julian added that Rosie should not force himself, because he does not happen. He will still love her and protect her. Even if she is 70, 2 years old, and she will not learn to read. Through the memories of the girl, crocodile tears flowed. She is already able to read now, though Julian does not remember that she has not been able to. Rustin also appeared in his thoughts, who assured the corner that a 17-year-old guy could not love such a worthless one again as she. Rosie drove away these negative thoughts. In order not to happen, no matter who it will become, Julian will eventually love her because he promised. But even if he does not fulfill his promise, the sister will continue to love him. Rosie opened the drawer with jewelry and noticed how many there. She began to think that she was chosen for tomorrow, and the girl then asked that she was not bought with many things, because her eyes are scattered and she cannot decide. Rosie admired her portrait with her brother. She should be grateful that Julian survived. It seemed enough to stay together and just protect his life. The sister continued to convince herself that there was no difference whether he remembers it or not, but she was painful to realize that everything was not easy. The corner fell on the floor and began to cry. At this time, Julian was behind the door. He witnessed his sister's sudden hysterics, but did not dare to visit the room. The guy informed the assistant that he needed to return to the room. Sulva hoped that the gentleman got without any troubles. Rosie ordered the subordinate to neutralize all Julian's property from tomorrow, and also put all 137 billion in magic stones before the monthly assembly. The girl pointed to a newspaper stating that many who did not expect such a scale from Romor. The magical tower was crisis, and the cost on the stone continued to fall. Solva understood that the lady would rather have to dissolve all the wealth in the air than to give her relatives. But it will also be responsible for the loss of money. If it comes to this, they will not end the edge of their benefits. Rosie assured that they were forced to do so. Once Julian asked a friend, if his sister desires something, then he would perform. And if the brother is not around, then the Solva stays on the side of the corner. The collection will take place in a week. If Caliban received a granddaughter letter, then it should arrive before the beginning. She needs a little more. As Bello expected, his father did not have time to return. And the arrogant niece does not want to give money, so he remains the only way out. If they want to get their wealth, they must adhere to the plan they have long agreed. The second son of Count Pelad hoped that they would share the inheritance. After all, who is concerned about their attitude towards an immature girl if the father eventually hates the temple? It was expected that the magicians would soon be left without a penny in the pocket and thrown away from there. Relatives believed that the corner was trembling at the gathering of fear. The girl introduced herself, noting that she was her first involvement and therefore hopes that she will come to her understanding. Bella was embarrassed to see that the corner was quite calm, though she should not cope with the atmosphere like every child. Uncle began to guess that the girl was fooling all the time to win time. She also planned to prevent them from doing something before an important meeting. But even if so, Bello is sure that the niece would not think about it. Bello noted that they wanted to discuss the inheritance that passed the girl from Julian. The wealth belongs to the families of Nart, and the sum is too large for a child alone. And as long as this money is under the wing of the name of Nart, they cannot allow the amount to be scattered around the world. That is why the elders of the family take care of the property properly. Bello stated that they would put the money in the right business, and as soon as the corner grows up, they would turn her back. The girl has repeatedly heard such phrases that shouted that relatives could not be believed. Each of the Nodder family had to express their opinion, and on the basis of it would be made. Rosie expected it, but it was still unpleasant. The girl went forward and stated that there was no need for a vote, since there was no longer money. She put all the wealth in magical stones. All relatives caught a lick. They were quite angry because the cost on the stone continued to fall. Next to the temple found a large mine with a large stock of fossils. Monica's second daughter noted that Romor is much more efficient and cheaper than these magical stones. Therefore, it is indignant that the niece, without understanding an investment, invested and immediately depreciated billions. Rosie stated that she had long planned to invest money in a business that her brother would like to invest, and unexpectedly said that the stones spoke Julian. Bello was raging. He was condescending to the girl only because she was a baby, and during this period she had time to scroll through such a trick. The uncle already, it happens, swung at the corner, as a wooden bar flew into his forehead. Julian did not expect Bello to be such a man who dreamed of raising his hand in a small child. The guy noted that he could repeat again. An hour ago, Peter Doctor was fond of Julian's recovery. He first encountered such practice. At first, the guy did not even listen to the recommendations. And now Julian regularly uses the medicine and does not forget to undergo rehabilitation. With this pace, the gentleman will later return to a normal life. How soon the guy was able to get out of the wheelchair. Julian remembered that his sister could not see his miracle trolley. He could not understand that this baby was wrong. Rosie smiled so brightly with her brother, and as a result, tears poured through him. And all because Julian can't remember his sister so desperately. My grandfather informed her grandson that he would not be able to attend the collected. Solva was gloomy because of this, because at the meeting, relatives would try to seize the property of Rosie. The assistant is afraid that the lady will not cope on his own, especially when it becomes known that the stone in which the corner is invested began to be cheaper. A girl who looks not more than 9 years will be present at such a dangerous gathering. Julian realized that his sister really made him worry about her. And what is just how she smiles at him. When the guy first heard that he had a sister, everything was different. There was only a sense of responsibility. Rosie came to her brother for every dinner and lunch and was interested in whether he liked. Julian could not understand why she was doing so. Only Nymate family members can attend meetings, and since the guy also belongs to her, he was determined to be present. Julian noted that he was able to cope with the slingshot and was known on his street. especially when the case was involved in birds. He never missed. The nephew was indignant at relatives because they flew into a little girl. Moreover, the money was not at all but it. Bello noticed that Julian always dressed as if he were going to the wedding, and now the guy looked disheveled and with a slingshot in his hands, not at all as the nobles belong. Julian noted that Sulva did not find his place. After all, she really was in such a terrible place. Bel had puzzled the words of the nephew. But the guy did not stop reading his relatives. He ordered not to bother the innocent girl, and if relatives want to raise a noise, then let them rush at him, because he has invested money. Julian warned everyone, if they try to touch his sister again, then it just won't get off their hands. Monica and Bello were shocked by the behavior of the nephew. The brother emphasized the woman's wicked look. Rosie reported that it was their Aunt Monica. The guy added that her look was overflowing with poison. The woman heard every word, though she was annoyed with similar comments, but she decided to miss her ear. Monica said they would now discuss Julian's punishment. The guy brought to the collection of a weapon that contradicts the rules, and worse, that he wounded one of the members of the meeting, which could lead to serious injury. Here, Bellotta was illuminated, because such behavior can be used for their own purposes. Although he allegedly realizes that the nephew had lost his memory, he stressed that the rules are the rules. And as a punishment, the man suggested sending Julian to the southern villa, so during the month he will rest and recover in the open air. Rosie was embarrassed by this development because she wanted her brother to stay in the estate, and if Julian has this place now, she does not even know when he perish. It was just a matter of time. Even in the past life, when his brother left the Count's estate, he died. The guy noticed that the sister was very worried, so he took her hand to calm. Bello added that Julian can take a corner with him because he does not remember, but the girl is his favorite sister, which he appreciates very much. The rest of the relatives quickly picked up this proposal. Everyone began to appeal to the fact that the nephew raised the main rule of assembly, and this is a disciplinary issue. Bello did not hide his Echidine smile and happiness. Suddenly a voice was interested in which the slingshot created so many problems and noise. Bello was frightened when he saw his father in front of him. Caliban stressed that the main goal of the Nort family is the destruction of the temple. They should maintain vigilance and be alert before any threat that may occur. And even then, the Count's children fond of a wooden toy as if it were a deadly weapon and asking for punishment. Bello was shocked that his father did not warn that he would come. Caliban ironically noted that his son probably did not expect his return, but the man began to justify himself, allegedly heard that there was a collapse on the way. The Count strictly stated that no shift of the mountains would prevent him from returning. After all, he is the same person who challenges even with natural troubles to just get to the target. The head of the family said he had arrived on the ship. Although he felt discomfort, he was able to avoid trouble and get faster than everyone had hoped. The man got an envelope out of his pocket, adding that a businessman would never lose a chance to enter into an interesting deal. That is why Caliban decided to accept the proposal of Rosie. The girl took a gift because it is very important for her. She thanked her grandfather for a seashell bracelet. The Graf's business grip is manifested even in such little things. This specific instruction forced the man to fulfill the request of the corner with the same conditions as before. To go to the coast behind the shells, after which the sea path was a logical choice. After all, to return to the straw and then to get to the estate would be unacceptable, a waste of precious time. Rosie shared that she had never seen the sea, so the bracelet is very important to her. Caliban noted that the gift was made by his hands. He spent time and made an effort. And his time is expensive, so his grandfather asked how his granddaughter would thank. As expected, the Count was interested, and no matter what the girl she names, she undertakes to pay a decent price to satisfy Calibana. Currently, the most powerful force in the empire is the temple. Even the royal family and 4 duchies cannot withstand them, and the county of North has chosen a strong enemy. The family is at danger because of confrontation with the temple. Therefore, the grandfather, when assessing the abilities of posterity, the skill he values over everything, to respond to the crisis, in other words, adaptability. Rosie reported Calibana that a few days ago she made a proposal to the hand and heart of the Duke of Dinfering, and if everything goes well, she is sure that marriage will be a great advantage for my grandfather. However, the Earl was not shocked, he was indignant. After all, he is not some dirty merchant who is so easy to marry his granddaughter. Caliban is sure that if he returns to Julian, he will lose consciousness from shock at that moment, The brother raised her sister as a precious treasure, and she decided to sell herself. Rosie did not expect such a reaction, but she is not yet finished. All she wanted to prove was the ability to cope with crisis situations. The girl noted that her grandfather chose the sea path only because she read her letter. As a result, he escaped the collapse and saves more time. And above all, he values time. No one is able to predict natural disasters, and now Caliban recognizes in the actions of his granddaughter not a simple accident, but a conscious ability to think in advance. When Rosie's proposal failed, she reacted instantly, proposing a new agreement. Caliban, hearing it, did not restrain it and sincerely laughed aloud. After that, the Earl asked Julian why he kept such a talent all the time. Bella was outraged that the girl was in vain spent all the inheritance. Although it was initially Julian's money, but still belonged to Nymate families. Roston supported his father, noting that Rosie was a native of the temple and even possessed sacred power. Therefore, they could not trust her in no way. Relatives suspected that the girl was a spying of the temple that spent all the money on their support. Julian was angry with stated that he was first and foremost his money, and he gave them his sister. After that, Roston began to blame his brother of plotting with the corner. He also asked to note that the guy was treated with special cruelty. Roston emphasized that this slingshot is not just a toy, but a real weapon from the temple. Julian could not continue to listen to these nonsense. He stated that if the temple had been supplied with a weapon, it would have long gone bankrupt and begged. Rosie realized that relatives tried to use her origin against her, and now they are trying to get involved in her brother. That is why Julian hid her far from the eyes of these cunning and greedy people. Rosie could not believe how a 19-year-old brother survived in this estate alone. Until he became strong enough, he had a lot to survive. It all came to the fact that Julian did not even allow his sister to see these people. But Rosie is sure that he will endure and survive, and this snake blossom will not break it. The girl swept before her grandfather that neither she nor her brother was loyal to the temple. She advised Calibana to use her shrewd eyes, and then the truth would become obvious. Rosie appealed to Roston and ordered him to give his grandfather to decide whether he was a weapon or not. The girl tried to think carefully every step. After all, thanks to the strategy, Julian survived and survived. As a result, he defeated all the opponents who stood on his way. The same thing wants to make a corner to appear and win. The girl began to manipulate Swamp, as if he were too timid to fulfill a simple request. The guy came to his grandfather to show a wooden bar. Before that, he asked Caliban not to believe everything that was somehow related to the temple. When the grandson came closer, the Earl grabbed his hand and began to rage. The Graf noticed that Roston was dressed in a suit of Eton fabric and thus helps the temple. Rosie suggested that the brother did not expect that her grandfather would return so early. That is why the guy did not change his outfit, but because the cousin provoked him, he completely forgot about what he was dressed. Rosie will not allow anyone who touches her with Julian to be unpunished. Caliban guessed that his granddaughter did it intentionally. She made Rostina go forward to see his grandson outfit. He also uses payment as a reason to show courage. He was interested in watching a little girl put her cousinless brother in the place of her cousin. Caliban emphasized that the wealth of North can only be used by Narth itself.